World War III. Is it upon us? Is it that time? Let's go back to my statements that I've been making over the past couple of years at least. The other vlogs I've stated World War III is how you define it, and it's always been going on. The Korean War was part of World War III. It just shifts around. It's never all over the world, but there have been these peak concentrations, just like you find in World War II. There's a peak concentration, and because it overran Europe, the Eurocentric people who were writing the history wanted to say, oh, this is World War II. It's very egotistical. But we go from the Korean War then to various other maybe smaller conflicts in less important parts of the world, less strategic, and then you go to Vietnam. That war was basically a proxy war as part of the World War III. And it shifts around. You go to any of the conflicts that are ongoing in the Middle East around the formation of Israel from 1967 and then to 1973, the Yom Kippur War, and onwards into the Intifada, and that was a declaration of war. That's the jihad. And then you got the creation of Al-Qaeda, and you've got constant tension between Pakistan and India and these kind of showdowns. And then you shift your focus over to Soviet Union, how that broke up. That was 1989, and then the Orange Revolution in Ukraine about more than 10 years ago, and now the present situation in Ukraine. But then you got to shift over to what was going on in Yugoslavia about 20 years ago or so, and that was a big ongoing conflict that broke up that region into Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Moldavia, Albania, all that between Italy and Greece. And then you've got all these other conflicts in the so-called New World, the Western Hemisphere, south of Mexico. Oh, the Central American banana republics that they want to call them, and wars that are ongoing, border skirmishes in South America. What do you think these are? Just little isolated events? These are all connected in as proxy wars. They're posturing and all-out gun battles between the superpowers. If you want to call it communist bloc versus democracy or capitalist bloc, NATO and beyond, it's all connected with that east-west kind of thing that seemed to come out of the end of World War II. When they smashed Germany in between them in the middle, it had to end World War II because the Nazi might, the Third Reich, which was an incredible phenomenon that is not to be understated or even to be misunderstood as an evil. It merely gave way to greater evil. It transformed itself. In fact, a lot of the Nazi elements and principles and plans just merely changed hands secretly under cover of the victory parade. Okay, am I making sense now? Are some of you saying, yeah, this guy's on the page with us? Because you have to wake up to what's really going on if you want to understand World War III. So post 1945, you really have to call it a turning point with this cataclysmic use of the atomic bombs, the hydrogen bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and various other uses that they've had, and testing and experimentation since then through the 50s. This was the dawn of World War III. Now, they want to call this a period of Cold War, but Cold War should be understood as the early phase of the World War III. Cold War, yeah, I mean, if you tally up the amount of dead and the amount of destruction, the amount of stress that they've put on the people, and what this has done to make our lives miserable, give us disease, and just lower the quality of our rights, our liberty, our pursuit of happiness. The amount, the quantity of this war's effect is huge, and I think they're just trying to brush it under the carpet because they don't see the amount of physical fatalities that they saw during, say, 1944 and 1945. As soon as you move from that and you have years of less death, you know, they want to say, well, it's not really a war. It's not really a world war. But it is. Where do you think the increase of cancer comes from? It can be traced directly to the war machine. It's an industrial side effect. All of industry is driven around weapons production. So you have to add all of this cancer in with it, even though you could make an argument to divide off a lot of the deaths because of people's personal behavior, their dietary habits, their nutritional failure. You know, people die of those diseases. Yeah, I think that could account for maybe 30 to 40% of the total death toll. And you could have the argument that that's not from World War III. So you could just say that's just you know, during peacetime people get lazy and stupid, and you know, obesity and these other kinds of diseases set in because of lack of activity. No exercise, you know, leads to unhealthy bodies that could lead to disease and death. So getting back to the all-out shooting war, which we want to look at World War III, we basically always have two major shooting matches going on ever since the 1950s. Vietnam was definitely one of them, so you'd see that at the end of the 60s going through the 70s, from, you know, Kennedy kind of ramping it up and the whole posturing over Cuban Missile Crisis, Bay of Pigs fiasco, and then President Johnson, the traitor, Texan traitor, pushing us into Vietnam, the Vietnam conflict that obviously the Republicans of that day wanted, and then gave way to the neocons, the neoliberalism and such that you have now. But you have, as you go into this new millennium, this new century that we have, 21st century, you have this idea that the Soviet Union is ended and there's no Cold War. That's total hogwash. What's going on in Ukraine right now, what's going on in Syria for the past more than 2 years, that, and also the constant tension around Iran, that's not to say that the Cold War is over. That's absolute proof of the Cold War heating up. It never ended. It never ended. Just because you see the rearrangement of the Soviet Union empire post 1989, in the 1990s they just restructured, and nobody's paying attention to China. If you don't want to consider the Cold War with China and Vietnam and everything else that's going on in that part of the world, then you don't see that it's heating up also. All around Korea, all around this tension now, this past year, with the offshore boundaries, international waters, the region in between China and Japan. These are old wounds that have never been healed. They're being opened up again. These scars are being ripped open. They're fresh wounds now. And this is World War III. This is so. I don't think you want me to be philosophical and just give you this controversial overview, but that's what I have to do each time to wake people up, because you can't have this adrenaline rush kind of mentality to think that World War III is going to be when they're dropping nuclear bombs. This has been the myth that has been shoved down your throat, and you're so stupid to swallow it. That's not World War III. That'll be the end of World War III, just as it was the end of World War II. So, to my reckoning, World War II, you have to understand that, is really starting in the midst of the Depression of the United States, which affected the whole Western Hemisphere and beyond. And that's like the end of the 1920s into the early 1930s, where you definitely see between 1932 and 1933, that's the beginning of World War II. So, why do we look at things and say, well, there's just war here for this 5-year period, that's just war there. There's no way to say that we have war in 1939. We have war. If we have war going on, and the war machine is grinding its gears and making people sick and pulling people into it and drafting people and creating tension at every border that you look at when you scan the globe, this should be called war. Well, on the other token, the other side of the coin, you could say there's peace. We have all these things for peace. We've got this, and we've got smartphones, and we've got time to play our video games. Your video games are all about war and killing and carnage and chaos and apocalypse. It's upon us. Don't be looking for any more. Don't be looking for, the Egypt revolution. They took out this president, or the Greece is going into riot. Iceland is kicking out all their bankers and restructuring, and they're stealing all the gold, and Germany can't get their gold back, and every step of the way is still asking. The war is on. When you're going to see an increase of the shooting and the dropping bombs, that's when you want to say it's war. You've got to already say that it's war. You have to take it more serious. Like, this is serious shit. Just because you're not in the thick of it and you think you're protected, it's just a matter of time before it comes for you. So you better have your exit plan. I know that that's going to be considered illegal to be talking like that at some point, but not for me. I'm comfortable. I'm going to know what to do when it happens. I'm totally prepared. I know how to roll with it. Bank runs, internment camps. They're already doing chemical warfare all over North America, for example, and everywhere else. Is chemical warfare going on? Biological warfare? Yeah. You know, it's Big Brother. That shows that we're in the midst of a war. They want to say the increase of the police state. There's always been a police state here. That's a sign of war, too. So, here's my prediction, since you listened so long. I'm doing these long videos now. For several months I haven't been doing these long, epic videos. Anyhow, what are we going to see with Ukraine? Past 24 hours. And by the way, I did watch AMTV. That's Christopher Green. I was checking it out because he was shown to be one of the related channels to mine. And I usually watch his videos like every couple months. So I was just catching up on his material. His latest videos are very good, very well produced. He's got some good funding. And he's talking about Ukraine. So he put out the 2 videos within 24 hours. So his one last night was talking about the Russian tanks rolling in. So I had already said, or maybe I didn't say it in a video. I was having some phone conversations with people. Russia has stated that it will protect Russian ethnics that are within the boundaries of Ukraine. So, you know, these are Russian nationals or their descendants, family of Russians, and they're concentrated around the Crimea and the Black Sea, the ports that they have there, and they have a military fleet which can access the Mediterranean. It always does, in fact, and that's where they go into the warmer waters, and they go into the Middle East, and that's where they're going back and forth overseas to Syria and everywhere else they go. And basically, Edward Snowden, did I mention Edward Snowden? And so basically those tanks are rolling in there, and you know, there's warnings, there's advisories that the State Department and the DOD of the United States is giving and saying, you know, don't go in, don't interfere with this revolution. It's like, you know, what right does anyone have to do whatever they're doing? It's a war, and it's a covert war, which I consider is a cowardly war. If you don't declare a war, and the leader doesn't come out and have the cojones to say, you know, this is our target and this is why, and I stand for that, then it's just sneaky freaking bureaucracy going on. And nonetheless, it's war that is being conducted by cowards. I'll take them in a room any day, fight them fisticuffs, and we'll see who can win. You know, these are armchair politician warlords, and they don't deserve any respect. I think the way they're conducting this is just a joke. Thanks for listening, and thanks for keeping track of things. Feel free to make a comment if you're a war expert, more than myself, because I'm just a peace-loving guy.